Hello, everyone. This is episode 13 of Here Comes the Pitch, a podcast about pitching story ideas. I'm your host, Derk Harron, and in today's episode, I will be pitching a horror story called ROTTJAW to my guest, Jeff Young. I would compare this story to the movies Candyman and Mississippi Burning. Well, without further ado, here comes the pitch. The pitch that I have for you is actually a horror story.
Oh, good. I love horror. I do. I love horror.
I know that you like Star Wars too.
Oh, I love Star Wars.
We'll get into that for the next issue episode where you'll pitch for me. But I'm going to pitch to you right now.
Absolutely.
And what's interesting about this story is that I've been working on it for about, I don't know, I'd say 7 or 8 years.
Really?
Yeah, it was a character that I drew for, he was just kind of like a doodle that I would do. There's quite a few characters that over the years that that just kind of pop up in my head, and then slowly but surely I've been kind of developing the stories, but this one is a character called ROTTJAW.
ROTTJAW? ROTTJAW. Okay,
yeah.
Great.
And so I'll get into why he's called ROTTJAW.
All right.
So try to take yourself back. Well, you didn't live back then, but 1865. It was right when the Civil War had just come to an end.
All right.
They've just abolished slavery.
Okay.
But you got to remember that a lot of the southern states, they were, of course, against
They were racist.
And they didn't want to get rid of their slaves. They were like, they're not free people.
Right.
These are not free men and women and children. And so, of course, they were rebelling.
Yeah.
And so this story is about how this once slave family that worked under their slave owners, at first, they were not allowed to leave. They were very resistant about the whole situation, and they ended up having to sneak out and go as far as they possibly could away from their ex-slave owner.
Okay.
And they didn't get away as far as they would have liked to, because one of their children, they have many children, but one of their children got sick, and so they had to kind of set up, a home, and let the kid
slow down.
Yeah, and let the kid heal up. But they just realized that it was a nice town that was actually really welcomed them, and so they decided maybe this is our home. Maybe we are far enough away for them not to find us, or to try to get some kind of revenge because of us sneaking away. Even though we're free people, Mm-hmm. But what ends up happening is that the ex-slave owner hires some bounty hunters to seek them out, and in this situation, it's not dead or alive; it's just dead. They want them dead, and just because, how dare they try to flee?
Yeah.
And
that kind of makes you wonder. I never really thought about that, but I wonder if that kind of thing actually happened?
Oh, there was a lot of
pure revenge killings,
mass killings and stuff like that.
Suddenly, someone that you considered your property is able to just walk away from you, and you're losing money.
Yeah.
I wonder if that really was happening.
No, it did happen. There was killings, and usually what ended up happening was that the army had to come in and help these people out of these plantations and stuff like that. And what the government did was make land available for them. Now, in this situation, they knew that they were either going to die or they had to stay. And of course, this was a horrible place for them, so they just ran.
Okay.
And so what ends up happening is that these bounty hunters find him, and they wait until like the father, ends up going to the market so that they can like prey upon his family. And luckily, he was able to get back and at least kill these bounty hunters, but he was too late, and the house was burned down, and his sons were killed. But in the battle between these bounty hunters and himself, he is mutilated. They end up taking his, slashing his jaw right off. Actually, I think that probably the bounty hunters end up getting away, actually, now that I think about it. And that was the one thing that the ex-slave owner wanted, was his jaw. For him to see the death of his family, but also to never be able to speak again, to
Well, how about just never being able to express your anguish at the situation? Yeah. I mean, you got no jaw.
Yeah.
You can't tell anyone about it.
Right. And the thing is too is that if you cut out a person's tongue, usually they can still live. But if you remove their jaw, that's
you're not really coming back from that necessarily. Yeah.
So
although it's been hyper toned down in movies and television, but getting your tongue cut out was not something that was easily survivable back when that was a common
that's
thing.
true too.
But I get what you're saying.
You're right.
We got plenty of characters without tongues.
Right. Yeah.
Without jaws.
I just assume that that would just be so rough to look at. Especially where I'm going to get to is. But so while he's kind of laying there in a pool of blood, just seeing all of his family dead, seeing his home that he built for his family burning, he actually hears a baby crying, and he realizes that his newborn daughter is still alive in the fire. And so with the last bit of strength that he has, he runs into his home and saves the child.
Yeah.
So he's holding this child, and he's dying while she's in his arms, and all he can think and pray is that his daughter will have a chance. One thing that I wanted to also touch on is that they live near this forest area, and this is kind of in Louisiana, where it's more of a swampy type
mucky, kind of long gangly tree branches hanging
right
down.
And so
looks good under a full moon.
But so they've always heard these weird sounds, and they had heard about these kind of swamp people, that these people that live in the swamp, that they were I don't know, they messed with voodoo and stuff like that, and that people feared them. But they never had a problem with these people. They never actually really saw them. They actually would kind of give them supplies, because they knew that these people are fending for themselves in a swamp. So whatever he could give to them, he would give to them, and he would realize that they would take it, and they would take what he gave them. So right as he's dying with his newborn daughter in his hands, the last thing that he sees is that these people come out of the swamp, and so at least she will have a family,
right?
And so this is kind of crazy. So now we flash 100 years from then. So now we're in 1965, which this is when civil rights is happening and everything. And
the Beatles.
The Beatles were happening too. And, the Black Panthers and stuff like that. Which, no, actually, I think the Black Panthers were a little later. But anywho, so we come across this, early 20s, African-American guy who's, he's helping out, feeding children. There was a program that where kind of these lower end families that just didn't make enough money to really feed their children. A lot of groups got together, and then they would through the community help feed kids, and so he's just doing his part to help out with the community. And so we start out with this guy, seems like a great dude, and then we see a young white woman who's pregnant, who's also helping as well, and we realize that they're a couple, and now we're still in kind of the Louisiana area, and they're a couple, but they've also kind of kept it a secret that here they are about to bring a mixed raced baby into this world, and this is
controversial.
Very controversial,
especially in the South. Yeah,
right. Even in the 60s too. Yeah. So one thing that they never did was hold hands or anything like that. They don't want to show that they're a couple, but it's always kind of thought that in this community that oh my goodness, this is this huge sin that's taking place. So at one point they do hold hands and they do show affection out in the streets, and so these people see it. They're driving home. A police officer pulls them over. You find out that this police officer is racist and that he is a part of the Ku Klux Klan. And so he ends up...
The trifecta. Racist, police officer, Klansman.
Well, there was, if you remember, Mississippi burning, do you remember the case where there was a couple people, it was actually two white men in their 20s and then a black man that was in his 20s that were arrested for no reason. They said that they were speeding. They were released around 9-10 o'clock at night, and that was kind of a curfew. You weren't supposed to be out. If you were black, you were not supposed to be out past 9. It was just a rule, because if a Klansman or racist would track you down.
Yeah. So instead of stopping the problem, it's just stay inside for your safety.
Yeah.
We're not going to deal with the bigger problem.
Well,
you don't go out.
This is a true story where they were found. They were arrested, brought to jail, released around 10 o'clock. When they were released, there were Klansmen that were ready for them, beat them to an inch of their life, then shot them in the head, and then buried them out in the middle of nowhere. They ended up finding the bodies and everything, and there was this huge trial, and it was the downfall of the Ku Klux Klan afterwards. And so these things were happening. There was
of course,
especially in the southern states. It was really interesting too when I was doing research on the Mississippi. The Mississippi burning murders. When they were looking for the bodies, they kept finding more bodies of people. They found
this was just the case that got him caught. Who knows how many times before it?
Yeah. So they would find black men and women lynched out in the middle of nowhere, and so it was so terrible. And they were checking, rivers and ponds, and they would find more bodies and stuff. And so it was just like
it used to be a lot easier to kill someone in the 60s.
So
technology.
So it was a horrible time. And so luckily that after they were able to find these people and to prove that the sheriff was involved, that Klansmen were involved, that it led to the end of the Ku Klux Klan is still around, but it definitely brought their power down to a limited amount, and and anybody that was a politician that was had any kind of ties to them, they cut ties pretty quickly after that point, because and this is unfortunate, but the reason why people started going against the Ku Klux Klan is because they killed 2 white people, and they weren't so upset about the young black man that was killed as well, but it's wow, now you're killing.
Right. No, I get that. It's that mentality, that group mentality, where it's hey, we're all on the same side, and then you do something, and it's maybe we're not all on the same side. You killed the wrong guys.
Yeah. Well, it's just man, maybe this needs to stop. Now now that we're killing our own kind, it's I don't know, maybe this needs to stop. So that was kind of a tangent, but that also lets you know of kind of what was happening at that time. So
sets the mood for your story is taking place.
Yeah, so you got
1960s. You got the 1860s rough.
Yeah.
You got the 1960s pretty rough.
Yeah. And so what ends up happening, is that this couple that are expecting a child end up getting pulled over. They end up getting taken out into the middle of nowhere. You think that oh my goodness, they're gonna kill this couple and their unborn child, but luckily ROTTJAW comes and saves the day. And kills these Klans members.
Can I take a guess at who ROTTJAW is?
Yeah, ROTTJAW.
No, go. Please
Yeah. So this undead character that looks like a zombie. Let me show you some pictures.
I'd love to see some art.
So this is ROTTJAW with his jaw cut off, and there's his children.
His family hanging.
Yeah, and then
gruesome.
Yeah,
it's gruesome.
And then here's some other ones. Yeah, that's ones where he's killing a woman that's half naked.
Yeah, no, that's great. That would scare the shit out of me coming out of the woods at night. I mean,
yeah.
There's something about an enemy that can't communicate his. There's something about an enemy that can't communicate why he's doing the things he's doing.
Right.
And I mean, you can correct me if you're wrong. Maybe he speaks psychically or something. But a guy without a lower half of his jaw isn't really doing much talking. And I just wanted to describe that for a second. This is like a cowboy gunslinger with some kind of rotten flesh skull, because he's not completely defleshed.
Yeah.
There's enough on there just to give him that decaying look, and his tongue is just hanging out.
Right.
Like Gene Simmons on a drunk bender.
That's a great way to explain.
Yeah.
To describe it.
But those are fantastic. I love that. That's great art.
Yeah.
You'd see that right on an old Tales from the Crypt cover or something.
Yeah. So these were just unfinished drawings back then, where I'd start something and I never finish it, but I just always had this idea of this undead gunslinger who it wasn't until recently I was just man, he should kill racists and Klansmen.
You gotta give your character that good motivation. I mean, anyone who's You can't kill racists. I like racists.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you fucking goofed.
Yeah, you're a racist. Yeah. But I just thought that, like, you can kind of compare it to, like, Django Unchained or something like that.
Yeah, when you first started pitching the idea here, I was actually thinking, I'm like, it sounds like Django Unchained meets Candyman in a way.
Yeah, that's...
and like, you got your gunslinger, but you got that supernatural element. There's some voodoo involved. It's been a while since I've seen Candyman, but I think that's kind of how he got his power. Like, he was killed by racists and then resurrected through...
Well, it was weird because, like, that it was, like, some kind of royalty that he worked under. He fell in love with the daughter of, like, the slave owner, and then, like, they found them together, and then that's when they cut off his hand and then covered him with honey, bees.
Yeah, bees were always an element in his thing.
Yeah, and so...
Yeah, because I used to get Nicolas Cage and The Wicker Man and Candyman mixed up all the time. And I would have loved to see Nicolas Cage, show up with a hook hand and, like, in the mirror.
Yeah.
No.
But I it's funny that you brought up the Dark Tower, but, like, yeah, I love that idea of, like, this lone gunslinger, but is undead, can't talk because he doesn't have a jaw, and I just kind of like this element, that of voodoo, and once I started doing some research on voodoo, it's interesting how there's, like, these sorcerers that they're called, like, Bokar, or which that I think that's a male wizard or whatever, like a warlock, but and then like a mambo is actually like a witch, and these are references from, like, West African or Haiti area, but that a lot of that is in Louisiana. And so one thing that they would do is that they would, like, collect people's souls and then bottle it and then sell it to people. And it was supposed to give you good luck. So I thought that it would be kind of interesting if, like, this ROTTJAW character who's controlled by like a mambo or a bokar, where maybe his soul is captured, and that was one thing too, is that you could turn somebody into, like, a zombie by capturing their soul, and then they would be able to do their bidding for them. But, like, for instance, like, if you didn't want that, then, like, you could just use their souls for good luck. Like, you could sell it to people. And I thought that, like, maybe that there was, these swamp people, like, a way of getting back at all these, racist sons of bitches, over all the years of them being enslaved and being, put in such terrible climate and conditions, and also with the civil rights movement, and just, like, never getting their day. They would go around and they would kill these, racists, Ku Klux Klan members, and then they would steal their souls, and then use them to help them out by, like, giving them good luck, which also brought wealth, success, business, good business, and so...
Well, yeah, because, I mean, a Klansman would hate it if their captured soul was used to benefit, like, a black man in the South, like, bring some poor swamp guy good luck or whatever,
Yeah.
The ultimate vengeance. It's like your own personal hell in a bottle. Like, oh, no, I don't want him to get rich. He's the wrong color.
So, yeah, and I just thought that would be kind of interesting, and then I thought that, since, like, 100 years has passed since, when he was originally created, maybe the one, like, the mambo or whatever, the witch that controls him is actually his daughter, and, like, we introduce that character at some point, like, maybe this couple seeks out, like, who was this person that, like, came to our rescue. Like, what is the story behind this character? And I don't really have an ending. I don't really have anything.
I was hoping you'd bring the daughter back in. Because, like, in a way, the opening, if it was in a film format, I don't know what medium you were going for here.
Right.
But if it was in a film format, the creation of the character losing his jaw, handing his daughter off to the swamp people for safety, and you would have the idea that he was, brought back using magic from these people. His daughter, it's 100 years later, like, that could be a big reveal at the end. Like,
right.
She's, ancient at this point.
Right.
She could be using these souls that are captured of the Klansmen even to fuel herself and keep alive. And just tons of those creepy elements. And, seeing her father sees her, it's a big reveal. The story could be completed at that point. I mean, I'm not trying to end the story.
No. That's the thing, too, is that, like, I never even thought of that. Like, that maybe the souls are keeping her alive. Maybe that's giving her youth.
Yeah, but not every single one, but just enough to keep the witch going.
Yeah.
Like that needs your power. And, like, no amount of souls are ever going to make her youthful or everything. And,
right.
You could add so much.
She's still going to age, but, like,
you can add so much sadness because, like, by the time that the father, who himself is a monster, meets his daughter, she's just so old and decrepit and not his little baby girl.
Yeah.
It leaves enough room for because I don't know if you watched a lot of horror in, like, the mid to early 90s, but that's when horror tried to be sadder than it was. Like, Candyman is a horror movie, but it's like, oh, but it's so sad. And there was a lot of that. Like, they even tried to make, like, some of the classic horror movies have, like, sad elements and, like...
Well, yeah, like, if you think about it, Jason Voorhees, that, like, a deformed kid that drowned in a lake, and it was because the camp people that work there, like, were supposed to keep an eye on him, and then they allowed him to die, like, because they didn't keep an eye on him. So.
Exactly. But yeah, man, I think that's a great idea. It's got so many elements of
well, and I thought that, like, you could really introduce him to any era. But, like, that's why I wanted it to be, like, where maybe there's just all these, like, little side stories that could be told throughout the years. Like, I thought maybe even, like, since we take that 100-year jump, the sequels could be, like, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and work our way up, or we can work our way back. Like, we could say, like, where maybe just right after, the creation of ROTTJAW, where he looks more human than now, where he's like he's kind of like.
And as you're saying it, I'm hard pressed, and I mean I'm somewhat of a horror buff, but I'm not a horror historian by any means. And,
right.
I'm really falling hard pressed to find a horror movie that, like, takes place in the 60s. And I know, like, we had the black and white era of film, and that was all in the 60s. But I mean, like, a horror movie that, from the 70s, 80s, or 90s that took place during that time period. It seems like all of them kind of started in the 70s and went forward from there. I don't think I've ever seen something that takes place during that time.
Yeah, I know a couple that, like, kind of... the origins kind of took place, like, maybe in the 50s and 60s. Like, I can think of, like, Night of the Creeps. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah, that's been a long time, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. but that's kind of about where, like, this comet kind of comes down and crash lands, and then these space slugs kind of, like, take over, and then the space slugs kind of come back, like, back in the 80s, and so but yeah, I also just thought that, like, it hits on, like, a political situation that we're still dealing with like racism and so he's almost like he is a horror slasher type of character, but he's also fights for a community. he fights against racism in a sense.
To a degree, he would be a very horrific vigilante, or he'd be a very horrific, an anti-hero to some degree.
Right.
No, I'm sure no one's going to agree with his methods, and I mean, unless he's just sticking to using the 6-shooters, he's probably got some very ingenious and disgusting ways that he would, dispose of his victims. But are they really victims at that point, or
right.
Those people deserve it?
Yeah.
I guess you could throw in that little bit of flair where maybe he's going after some of, like, the family members of the bad people who don't necessarily have anything to do with it.
Yeah, like, well, maybe that it's just like the descendants,
yeah.
Yes, and yeah, like maybe they're not bad, but like yeah, like but they have like their ancestors are terrible people, and I guess at that point you could like he's not so much a vigilante or anti-hero. He's just a bad guy, at that point. And I would say that would be a good sequel to it.
Right, yeah.
At some point.
Yeah, well, and they've done that with other horror characters, like where they'll change like what role their character takes on. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Puppet Master movies at all, but
I actually just saw the new one. It hasn't even been released yet.
A panel at Comic-Con. It was horror movies of the 80s. Yeah. I was there, and they said that a new Puppet Master was on the way. And I'm like, no way.
I just got a special screening of it.
Really?
Screener.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it was great.
And I heard that they've made them full-on bad guys because and don't have to spoil it for me. Probably I don't know. You probably got an NDR that you can't do on your podcast, like a non-disclosure or whatever.
Well, they just told us that we couldn't release where we got it.
Yeah,
but we could talk about it. But yeah, I won't ruin anything for you because it's actually really good. I don't know if you ever seen the horror movie Bone Tomahawk.
Yeah.
It's actually written by the guy who wrote and directed Bone Tomahawk.
Really?
So
and he's doing Puppet Master?
Yeah.
That series has taken a turn from because the first Puppet Master was meant to be taken seriously. It was supposed to get a theatrical release, but Charles Band crapped all over that idea.
Yeah.
It went full B movie, and everyone after that just got progressively weirder and more schlock.
Yeah.
Because Bone Tomahawk was a very well-made movie.
Yeah.
In fact, everyone was telling me, "Oh, it's a horror movie." I was like, "Why is this a horror movie?" And I can't give anything away, but you find out very clearly and very dramatically why it is a horror movie.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah, and the guy that stars in the movie is the main guy in Reno 911, the guy with the short shorts.
Lieutenant Dangle?
Yeah, he's like the main character.
And he's not goofing around and goofing.
There's a little bit of goofiness. Yeah. Like there's it's a really funny movie, but oh my gosh, they like quadrupled the amount of kills that are in usual Puppet Master movies in this one.
Well, they probably have a little bit of a budget for this one.
Yeah, I think
a lot of those movies were limited in how many kills based on how many dollars they could have,
but no, it's actually a pretty good cast. I don't know if you ever saw the Human Centipede movies.
Unfortunately, I saw the first one.
Okay, so the doctor?
Yes.
That's in it? He plays the Puppet Master.
That, that's actually quite fitting. There is not a single thing that I would take away from the Human Centipede and put into anything else except for maybe him as an actor.
Yeah.
He was okay in that. I'm sorry, I don't want to get off on a tangent on the Human Centipede. This isn't a movie review podcast, but
no, but the thing is that we're bringing up movies that are sort of like in the same realm as this idea.
You start spinning me this, and right off the bat, I was telling you that Candyman came to mind.
No,
it's when was the last time anyone realistically thought about Candyman? That is not. I wouldn't say that is a classically cemented horror movie, but we've got that's right, and then it's that was actually a neat idea. It was this guy fueled by tragedy, fueled by racism. He comes back for revenge, and then it's kind of like a subject that no one really felt like touching. But you had said it earlier; it seems more relevant now than ever. This is real stuff that we're dealing with here.
Right. Yeah.
And to have a character that just came and literally destroyed racism with a couple of guns would be amazing.
And I think that it would be cool that maybe he maybe doesn't have the name ROTTJAW in the racist community, maybe they call him the Reaper or something like that, where he's this talked about character that that's feared.
Yeah, so many movies they use the title is for us, I'm trying to think of some examples. the Predator was never referred to as the Predator.
Right.
The Terminator, I was going to say, but no, they straight up called them Terminators. Friday the 13th, like, no, that never happened. They never focused on Friday the 13th being a theme. It was just Jason Voorhees, really.
Right.
And so, yeah, ROTTJAW, maybe no one calls him ROTTJAW, but to us, he's ROTTJAW.
Yeah.
That's the cool name. To him, he's just someone else. Right?
Yeah.
Or
maybe, yeah, at some point, yeah, he does, they start calling him that, like, maybe. But at first, it's a name that catches on. But for right now, yeah, like, maybe he's just called, like, the Reaper, or like or something like that, where that people fear that
Mr. Bones.
Yeah, Mr. Bones or something like that. I don't know, but I just always thought that, like, this character has a lot of potential, and I'm happy that I got to pitch it to you, man.
Oh yeah, I'd watch it.
I tried to do a 24-hour comic book challenge, and I tried to adapt it into a comic book. I got about 7 pages in, and then I fell asleep. Yeah, because it was just like, I think like 7 pages took me about 12 hours, and then I was like, I'll eat a couple slices of pizza, and then that made me sleepy, and I was just like, I'll just take a little nap, and then, like, I ended up sleeping, like, about 7 hours, and I was like, oh my god, like, I can't go back to the challenge now, because...
Well, hey, I mean, your illustrations aren't bad, I'd say...
Yeah, I should have brought you the comic book pages, but...
Well, yeah, because I love reading comics. Like, that is actually something that I missed out on the first part of my life for various reasons, but I've gotten very into reading comics. I love that whole world, and I've started reading, like, comics as far back as, like, the original Hellblazer series. That's easy by these days.
Yeah.
And something like this would fit right in with, these adult-themed comics. Not adult, you know what I mean? Like, comics for adults. Really.
Right.
Like, Hellblazer was not something children were very interested in. Not like your...
And shouldn't be reading.
No, absolutely shouldn't be reading. But something like that would be great, and it would just... It's like the old Tales from the Crypt, because it's so expensive to make a movie. Like,
right.
If you try to be like, oh, well, this is just going to be a movie, it might never grow there, but the fact you already took time and you started to draw it out, unfortunately the pizza got better at you. You gotta know your enemy, man.
Yeah. I maybe I should have just took I don't know, snacked or something.
What did I say when we first started recording? What do I got in this cup? It's coffee. It's coming up on 8 o'clock, and I'm like, I gotta drink some caffeine. I'm in my 30s, and if I eat pizza this late at night, I'm down for the count.
Yeah. So, well, I think we should end it here, man.
Yeah, no, this was great. I'm fine with ending it here. I loved it. I loved everything.
Thanks, man. Well, you'll be back for the next episode, and you'll be pitching to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to hearing your pitch.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
All right.
Talk to you then.
All right.